What's up? Welcome into this Wednesday edition of Pushing the Pile, brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. We got Leger Douzable joining the show, as he does every single Wednesday.
Sharp, too.
We just haven't had the Wednesday show in a while.
I mean, it's actually kind of cold out here in Florida, which, again,
it's about to be like record-breaking cold.
I know. Like, it just depends on where you've lived or where you're from. Quote-unquote cold is like 50 degrees, 49 here.
I shut the garage door for the workout this morning.
I bet you did.
Usually I have it open. I looked at my wife. I was like, do you want to shut the door? She was like, yeah. And I was like, thank God.
I mean, you know, when you get older, man, when it's cold like that, the bones don't warm up as fast.
I hate cold workouts. I used to go to a gym that kept it at like 65. I had to go elsewhere. Nah.
It's just try practicing in the AFC East or the NFC
Exactly.
North.
You're praying for that type of weather.
Yeah.
On today's show, we have a few more firings to get to. Black Monday turned into a Black Tuesday, unfortunately. We have our deep dives and we have our mailbag segment to cap it off. Let's get into the first off the ball, though, where Antonio Pierce fired after 1.5 seasons, I guess, as head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders. I'll be honest, this one, I think I saw. Like, this one, there was just not a lot of redeeming qualities to his season. I'm not sure I necessarily saw coming, but I'm not surprised about this one the way I was some other ones.
I'm a bit surprised only because when you go to the year before, he essentially almost led them to the playoffs with inept quarterback play, right? And he galvanized that team. We kind of saw this scenario play out with Rich Bisaccia, and they made the wrong decision and didn't hire him, right? And Josh McDaniels comes in, and he's let go, after like 4 or 5 games?
He's still on the payroll.
Exactly. So my thing is, for a team that was quote unquote in money trouble, for you to just relinquish a guy that was a Raiders fan, grew up a Raiders fan. Obviously, you saw the end of the season, the team was still fighting for him, but he got the job with one hand tied behind his back. And fellas, we know this. We can speak about this. If you don't have the guy that's the correct signal caller, the guy under center, you have no chance to win in this league.
Yep.
You have no chance. Like, now, there's cases where you have like the Mike Tomlins of the world that can elevate their team. But also, I would say a lot of people would say the Steelers roster is significantly better than the Raiders roster.
100%.
Right? Player for player. So when you look at it and then you trade Devontae Adams, right? Now, Jacoby Myers is your number one guy. Brock Bowers, I don't know if anybody saw that happening. We knew he was a really good player. But you talk about a guy that's going to be an all-pro his rookie year and developed in that system. Again, with inept quarterback play, I would just liken it to this. Antonio Pierce got everybody to buy in. They continued to fight. You never saw a team that quit any week. And I would have loved to see him actually get a real chance with a real quarterback on the center. And this is not me disrespecting the quarterbacks that were there, but like we just talked about,
they just all stack up with the good guys in the league.
And then just look at
it's not an indictment on them as human beings.
And then look at the AFC West, right? 3 teams make it to the playoffs. You got Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, and then you had that perfect marriage between Bo Nix and Sean Payton. So that's essentially what Antonio Pierce is going up against week in and week out. And again, no disrespect to the players, but he has Gardner Minshew, Aiden O'Connell, and Desmond Ridder. Like, you didn't give him a fair shot. I thought it was utterly ridiculous that he got fired.
And I'm in agreement with you I'm in agreement a little bit with both of you guys. Like, I'm not surprised that he got fired.
Yeah, but it's ridiculous.
When you look at the body of work, it's not indicative of the talent that he was dealing with.
Correct.
Or it is indicative of the talent he was dealing with.
Is, yeah.
And the quarterback situation, like you said, I mean, you are hamstrung from the very beginning. And if you close your eyes and imagine Antonio Pierce being there for another year and which quarterback they would draft or Tom Brady and that search party would go get, it's really interesting to think about some of those things you talked about being elevated even more. I mean, Myers gets even more production. Brock Bowers, I don't know how the hell you get better, but he gets even better.
Correct.
The offensive line, they began to invest in that. And I like
I was actually pretty solid.
I like their tackle.
Yes. Improved a lot.
Colton Miller, they've got good players there, and they played hard. The only issue I have with this entire process is obviously the Raiders are completely over-leveraged in terms of what they owe coaches that are no longer coaches in that building. The name tag has been changed 4 times, and they're still paying the first guy.
Correct.
You should not lean on the opinions of your star players when it comes to these coaching firings, coaching hirings, coaching changes. Max Crosby, like myself when I played in Chicago, like so many other players around the league that have teams that are dealing with turmoil, spoke up in support of Antonio Pierce even more than support. He was essentially like, if you guys mess this up and don't bring him back, you might have to trade me. And you kind of hold the whole building hostage, in my opinion, when there is a due process that should happen when coach firings happen, coach hirings have to happen. There has to be a search. There has to be interviews. When you do that, you bastardize the entire process, in my opinion. And if the Raiders continue to do things of that nature, they will continue to be in the basement in regards to the financial situation, the success, and that coaching carousel that we see time and time again. And for Antonio Pierce, the film is out there. His players played hard until the very end. There will be another staff that will take him, and he will probably have another shot.
Correct.
While I don't think it's surprising, well, again, why I wasn't surprised, I was more not surprised because this is the Raiders that we're talking about. They have had 14 different head coaches since the year 2000. And that's not even counting that John Gruden's been there twice since the year 2000. He's one of those 14. So it could be 15 because obviously he was two of them. And the fact that they're not in a position to get a better head coach right now. I talked about the Pats. They could maybe get the top dog with how good Drake May looked.
Correct.
And the fact that a guy wants to go to a place with the rookie quarterback.
And the cap money they got.
They don't have a quarterback, and they don't have the ability to go get a quarterback. Correct. So they're not in any better situation now than they were a year ago. If you're stacking up how good these openings are, they are either last or second to last. It's them and the Saints
for sure
right now, just because of where they're at from a cap situation. And they spent a lot of money in free agency last year, and it didn't do diddly poo for this franchise. So I don't think they're going and getting a top name. They're not getting a Ben Johnson. They're not getting a Mike Vrabel. They're not in contention for them. So what are you doing firing Antonio Pierce?
Who does that fall on the swings and misses in free agency?
It's partly GM and coach. It depends if the GM has the power to bring in who they want, and the owner has to approve the payment. Right.
But with the Raiders, it's the owner. It's Mark Davis. Yeah. So that's why you are the Raiders and why they're one of the most inept franchises over the past 20 years since they went to the Super Bowl is because of ownership. It's not the GM necessarily.
I got a question for you guys. Do you think that, because we know there's a famous guy, the greatest of all time, he's got, a small part of ownership in the Raiders. Do you think his greatness and what he's done in this league, talking maybe to Mark Davis, had some sway on this decision? And maybe they're thinking, like you said, because it's not an attractive job on paper by any means, right? Because they did win those games, and now it's going to be really almost impossible for them to move up. Because when you look at the first three picks, all three of those teams need quarterbacks. And me and Mike have talked ad nauseum about how there's really only two guys that are going to probably go in the first round. Could this be a scenario where, because he has a personal relationship with Vrabel, he's telling Mark Davis, man, we could maybe get him. Again, if I'm Mike Vrabel, to your point, I'm looking at New England. I already got my quarterback of the future. I have 130 plus million in cap space, right? There are some pieces that couldn't be foundational pieces, but we have a boatload of money and we have the quarterback. When you have a boatload of money, you have the quarterback, you can build around the quarterback, right? So it's like, but with the Raiders, you don't have the quarterback. What are you going to do about the quarterback? And like Mike said, you're not in a position to take one of the top two guys. So is it going to be a bridge guy like Kirk Cousins? Do you maybe try to throw the bag at Sam Darnold? Like, that's the thing. I'm like, so where does Tom Brady fit in this scenario? Is this a scenario where he's telling Mark, maybe because I'm in it now, we can maybe lure one of those coaches into the Raiders?
I think that's a really good point. And I think it starts with the fact that Tom Brady is used to excellence and he is used to doing things his way. I mean, the Patriots had a strength staff, but Tom had his own strength staff. Patriots had a kitchen. He had his own kitchen.
For sure.
So I would imagine that the immediacy in which he told Mark Davis that we're going to start fresh and clean house, clean kitchen, that had to be an ASAP type of conversation. And I think that starts with the head coach and it finishes with Tom Brady being involved in the scouting meetings, involved in the draft meetings, involved in everything. He wants to have his hands in everything.
Correct.
I would imagine. I mean, he's a quarterback for God's sake. These guys can't help themselves. But I think that it does start with the head coach. And even though Antonio Pierce, to the things that you were saying, has been a good head coach, Tom wants, in my opinion, he wants a clean house and to start fresh. And he doesn't want to wait around for another year.
What about also this, and this, you can tell me if this is crazy or not. Antonio Pierce was on the 07 Giants. Right.
So I brought this up on a show yesterday.
Yeah.
I know where you're going. I love where you're going because I'm like, maybe that is a little bit of.
Tom Brady is not one to not hold a grudge, right? Like he is a guy who
I didn't even think
does
about
not.
Oh, he stopped
take
him from the
that
perfect
lightly.
it.
season.
He blemished it.
Yeah, he stopped him from the perfect season.
Yeah.
I thought about that too. I did it kiddingly
That's
on the show, and I was
retro
like,
petty.
let's not forget Antonio Pierce stopped them from having the perfect season.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes on the outside, fans, you're like, no teams make decisions based off of shit like that.
Oh,
But
teams like
they
off emotion
100%.
all the time.
They 100%. All the shit behind closed doors is 100% emotion based. They're still humans.
That's a great point. And
Conspiracy
Thomas Petty.
theories.
Yeah, we love those here. Yeah, that was great. That was great though.
All right, the other firing this one blew my mind. I saw it come down the pipe and I was like, what in the world are the Tennessee Titans doing? They fired their GM, Ran Carthon, after 2 seasons. So they went from John Robinson, who got fired December 2023, fired Mike Vrabel, or it was December 2022, excuse me, Mike Vrabel after the next season,
Correct.
and now Ran Carthon after the next season,
But kept the head coach.
but kept the head coach.
Making no sense to me.
And
He has drafted really well in the offensive line, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you're the draft
They had
guy.
a pretty good draft last year.
I thought the draft was great. I mean,
Jason
DeAndre
Latham.
Swift,
They've got like
Yeah.
three guys.
Jarvis
They've got
Brownlee.
like 3
Jarvis
guys
Brownlee.
in his
Yeah.
regime that have been players on the
Correct.
offensive line. Like that's important. I don't know. What do you think? I was kind of surprised by this. If you're going to do the GM, you got to do everybody.
Yeah, that's the thing that's crazy to me, is that you're letting a guy who could very well be a lame duck head coach. I mean, you end up with the number 1 overall pick in your first season for a team that I think fairly objectively shouldn't be drafting number 1 overall.
Great
Yeah.
defense.
They have talent on that roster in a way that other teams around the NFL that are ending up with better records than them did not. So shouldn't have been drafting number 1 overall. Thought Callahan did objectively not a great job in his first year. And so you're going in with now going to be a new GM with possibly a lame duck head coach.
with
and
the
then a
number
new
1 pick.
Yeah, it's bad.
So let me break this down because I know Ran Carthon personally. I was with him in San Fran. Love
Playing.
Ran. Finally got his opportunity. He was excited. I was probably one of the first people to text him and said how proud of him I was. Talked to him at the Senior Bowl after he got the job. When you look at it, right, a lot of people thought Tennessee was maybe a quarterback away. Could Will Levis be the guy or not? I will say this, right, and I would say this to Ran in his face. I thought he got, and I love a GM that's aggressive, but I thought he got too aggressive in some of the moves he made in free agency. Ones that come to mind, the Calvin Ridley thing. Ridley was coming off of 2 years not playing, and he had a okay year in Jacksonville. I mean, again, you got to put this into perspective. Going over 1,000 yards in a 17-game season isn't what it used to be, right? And he had a lot of drops. He had a whole bunch of concentration drops, which bled into this season as well for the Tennessee Titans. Again, a whole lot of drops as well. There were question marks about him learning the playbook in Jacksonville, being on the same page with Trevor Lawrence. And you saw that at times this year with Will Levis as well. And then another big one from your Chiefs. I know you're Chicago Bears, but
Snead.
Yeah, Legarius Snead, right? The Chiefs were willing to let him go because there were rumors that he had something wrong with his knee. Now, again, played at a Pro Bowl level last year and was a straight dog. But they traded not only draft capital, but money as well to get him in. And what did he play, like 6 games, if that? So that didn't work as well either. Now, again, as a GM, not everything is going to be a home run hit, right? But to your guys' point, for you to change the GM in 2 years is utterly ridiculous. Like, if you're going to do that, clean the whole house.
Yeah.
Right? Because to Mike's point, to Kyle's point, there was enough talent on that roster to at bare minimum win 7 games this year. Right? And when you look at it, they could have even potentially competed for the division with the Houston Texans because we know the AFC South is a lame duck division, but Jacksonville had a down year. A lot of people thought that they would take a step, and they didn't as well. Indianapolis was coming off 9 wins the year before, so a lot of people were like, they'll probably muddle around that again, and they did this year. So it's like that essentially that division was up for grabs.
Yes.
And again, the pieces they have on defense, I mean, they have dogs on defense.
Sweat and Simmons are 2 of the scariest.
And then you
human
throw Arden Key in there too, and the Harold Landry on the other side. Like they have dogs.
I'm just
on that
worried
team.
about those bigs on the
Yeah,
inside.
for sure. They have, but that's the thing. When them dogs are pushing in the middle, that means it makes it a lot easier for the guys to come around the corner. So yes, Ran Carthon had some misses, right? But when you're trying to change the culture and turn things over, because in Tennessee it hasn't been good for the last few years. Now Mike Vrabel did have them in the playoffs consistently, but His last couple of years, they weren't
6
as
and
good.
24 or something like that.
Exactly. They have not been good the last couple of years. And when you're trying to overturn that, it's going to take a little bit of time. To Mike's point, all right, you want to move on from the GM? You got to move on from the head coach as well, too, because they gave him talent on that roster. And for you to have the number one pick, there's no excuse for that.
Yeah, I do think this, if there's anything to point to that could be why it happened, they gave a record amount of money, guaranteed money in free agency last year to that class, whether it was Lloyd Cushenberry, whether it's Calvin Ridley, whether it's Jerry Sneed, I guess not technically free agent, but like an offseason acquisition.
Him,
and the returns were a number one overall pick, right? Like that's an owner. When you give out guaranteed money, they're putting that out.
They're feeling it in their pocket.
Right? They're feeling it immediately. So that will make an owner butthurt real quickly.
But it goes back to what we talked about. Like, you can't make decisions on emotion.
Yeah.
Right now, again, if he had come in there, and yes, they've struggled the last few years, but they also had a coaching change. So you got to give at least a GM and head coach. You should at minimum give them 3 years, but at least 2. For them not to give them 2 years, it's ridiculous. And now it's like you said, when you hire a new GM, Callahan's not his guy. What makes you think they're going to see?
There's no trust.
What makes you think they're going to be eye to eye and see things? You could be in this same scenario again last year. So it goes back to what Mike was saying. Like, emotional decisions are made by owners and GMs all the time. To me, this was an emotional decision that shouldn't have been made.
I agree.
People in Tennessee aren't happy.
To that point, let's go up top just a few hours north flight-wise to the New York Giants. And this would be my deep dive later. But it's just like, we publicly saw what Joe Shane was saying in the offseason, right, in regards to not bringing in Saquon Barkley, or the Xavier McKinney thing made absolutely no sense to me, because I hate when players get tagged, right? Us as players, we hate that.
Yeah.
But they had that at their disposal and didn't use it. They couldn't even use the transition tag, right? Now, maybe somebody would have paid him because he ended up being one of the top play safeties on the league anyway by Green Bay. But it's just like the fact that you didn't think a 24-year-old that was getting ready to be on his second-year deal, that for most of this season led the league in interceptions, wasn't going to be a foundational piece for you.
You're just not watching.
And it was the way he was talking, like the pride he had in his voice about letting Saquon go, letting Xavier McKinney. And yet this guy still has his job. But yet Rand Carthon in 2 years gets fired. Like, it's utterly ridiculous.
And then there's the other side, people keeping their jobs with, gross negligence as to what their job requires. I look around the league and, you're talking about Callahan. If Carthon's going to go, Callahan's got to go. And, my buddy Ryan Poles in Chicago, there's been questions about him the entire offseason, and there's questions about people in all buildings. But some teams are quick to react and make these emotional decisions, and some teams sit on their hands for too long and miss the boat on potential Super Bowl winning staffs. It's a shame, but that's this league, man.
I just think
I wanted to ask him real quick, what do you think about the president's comments about Ryan Poles in regards to people saying, he's on the last year of his deal?
You're talking about George McCaskey.
Correct.
Not Joe Biden.
So George is one of the classiest individuals ever. He flies coach. If he gets an exit row, he gets an exit row, but he's sitting in the back of the plane. Make sure that everybody on his staff has a first-class experience. He's a tremendous family man, a churchgoer. You would love George McCaskey. Okay. He umpires Little League games.
I love that.
He is the best. And he'll talk to you like
nothing, like
just a normal guy. Because he is a normal guy. He just happens to, his family owns the Bears. But here's the deal. He never played. He never played the game. And he's never had his hand in the dirt. And he's never been in the front of the team meeting room after a tough loss and had to address a group of men. So I find it hard to believe that he is as prepared as we would hope as Bears fans in terms of making football decisions, which is why you hope that a guy like Kevin Warren or Ryan Poles or Ian Yates Cunningham would be able to make these decisions. And while they have gotten a lot of things right, there have been some things that they've completely.
Yeah, actually, I think it was Kevin Warren that said something about Poles a year is a lifetime or something like. I don't know. Did you see those comments?
It feels like people are learning on the job.
Yeah.
And he was talking about his Poles going to be back next year.
That's what I'm saying,
A year is a lifetime. But it seems like
what type of card is that?
I don't know. I'm not a president. I'm not an owner. I'm not a GM. But it's clear to me that there are not enough real football people in buildings across the league, and people that are not just yes men. There's so many people that are tied on to thinking about what their next gig is if this thing gets canned, and
True.
It's unfortunate reality.
who am I going to take with me, and who wronged me? It's like Tom and Antonio. It's like that shit keeps up. If you think it's just players, you're wrong. It's guys in these buildings as well. But I do want to make sure that I get the point across that I love George McCaskey, but there's limits to what we can do. I was an offensive lineman. You can't count on me to tell you what the coverage was every play. You know what I'm saying? That's why they make quarterbacks, and that's why they make receivers doing check with me. But I don't know if he knows what he wants or what it takes. And when I hear the question about the GM and the head coach being in unison, some of the answers scare me.
Well, you want your GM and head coach in unison. That's why
putting
them on different
only that easy, right?
different contract schedules just
doesn't make sense.
Never makes sense. Never makes sense.
Because then you get a GM that's overdrafting to save his
well, then
skin.
you get power struggles.
Yeah,
you get power struggles.
Sure.
But then there's that part too where you said they're off schedule. It's like the new head coach, same GM. GM's going to try to make managerial decisions to save his job. Head coach is trying to have a good introduction to his career. Sometimes the wires get crossed and you get a shit product, and it's unfortunate that we have to watch that.
100%. All right, we're going to take a quick break. After that, going to get to our deep dives for this week. Now it's time for the Captain of the Week, brought to you by Captain Morgan, the official spice rum of the NFL. In honor of Super Bowl 59, Captain Morgan is spicing things up in a way you don't want to miss. Stay tuned for more info. This week's Captain of the Week, Week 18, is none other than Mike Evans, Buccaneer, fitting for the first Captain of the Week we do. 9 receptions, 89 yards. That's not why, though. It's his 11th straight 1,000-yard season to start his career. Do we think we see that ever touched? I know passing is shot through the roof, but do you think anyone gets that level of health and consistency to get to 11?
How many years does
I think JJ has 5 in a row.
How many does Jamar Chase have?
Do we think that's just going to be kind of the norm now?
I think that might be the norm.
That's what I'm kind of
because especially when you go to 17 games.
Yeah,
if it was 16, then 17 I think it's going to be the norm.
So he better have a few more
hitters started, because I remember 61. That was Roger Maris, right? 61 home runs. I wonder when that must have been, Roger Maris must have been our days Mike Evans, where it's that guy reached 61, and now there's guys hitting.
He had the asterisk because they just switched to 162 right before.
What was it, 58?
It was 154 before. It was 60 with Babe Ruth, but it was 150.
I think it was 8 games less or something.
You know what I'm saying? This is to answer your question in short, this is the norm. They throw the ball at an elite level. These kids are, picking specific footballs to use when they're 6 years old.
But to that point, right, you have to talk about the longevity and being healthy and being out there enough to get 1,000 yards, right? Because even Justin Jefferson, I think, flirted with it that one year where he missed 7 or 8 games. We still went over 1,000, which is crazy to do in 8 games. But even Mike, he missed a few games, was able to get over 1,000. So, we talk about it being 17 games and how it's a lot easier, but you got to talk about it's like LeBron James, the longevity of your body being able to be healthy, the things you have to do to make sure your body's ready to play a 17-game season for 11 years straight is insane.
Yeah. The good thing is Mike Evans doesn't look like he's lost too much of a step. He probably is going to go a few more.
The things that are
for 150 in that game.
He has so much length. So he has feel like Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce loses a step, it doesn't affect his game that much. Mike Evans has that real length that you're just born with. It's a God-given, physical trait. That doesn't go away. You know what I'm saying?
And everyone wants to make Mike Evans is one of those comps in draft season that everyone's oh, he's like a Mike Evans. No, not a lot of people like him like Evans.
No.
He's freaking massive, this dude. He's 6'5", 235. There ain't a lot of wide receivers that move like him.
I feel like every bigger receiver they say is Mike.
Yep.
I feel like Drake London came out, they said the same thing. Yep. I'm not everybody's Mike Evans.
It's not.
It might be Mike Evans with Penix though.
The way he's played the last couple weeks, good Lord.
All right, that was the Captain of the Week, brought to you by Captain Morgan, the official spice rum of the NFL. This Super Bowl 59, Captain Morgan is calling on crews across America to gear up for something big. If you love hurricanes, daiquiris, really any delicious rum cocktail, you want to follow the captain and keep your eye on NOLA's most iconic street the week of the Super Bowl. Visit followthecaptain.com to begin your adventure.
I like a dark and stormy. You ever had one?
Yeah,
of
Dark
those?
Storm's great.
Dark.
I don't know. What is it?
Dark and stormy. There's some rum in there. Let me
There's a
tell
lot
you.
of rum. It's
There's
like
some Captain
5 shots.
Morgan in that dark
Really?
and stormy. We always have it in Montana in the summertime. It's a good
Yeah.
by the lake fire pit
Oh,
cocktail.
Have you guys been to that tiki bar here? What's the tiki?
No.
There's like a famous tiki bar. My brother's a big tiki guy.
Is
Really?
He loves and
he like
every
a
time I go to this
parrot
place, he like makes the tiki drinks like to the tea, and they're
He brings a blender with him. One of those guys. He hops over the thing.
He's got a zillion. He lived in Hawaii. That's why, and he has like a zillion Hawaiian shirts.
He has
Just
long
like,
hair like you
he's
used to
got-
have.
No, he doesn't. He's not as.
For
chill.
those of you at home that don't know Mike prior to this show, which I didn't know Mike
it
until
went
this
down
year,
to my belly button
he
at
had
one point.
hair to his belly button.
Really?
Beautiful
Yeah.
surfer hair, like sunshine from Remember the Titans.
Sunshine.
Yeah.
R.I.P.
Okay.
Cut it 4 years ago, almost 5 now. All right, let's get to our deep dives though. Leger, what do you got first?
So we kind of spoke about this a little bit. We'll dive into it a little bit deeper. And my deep dive is, why do offensive-minded head coaches get a bigger leash than defensive head coaches? And why does the goalpost get moved for those defensive head coaches? Perfect example. We were talking about Antonio Pierce earlier, another coach that got fired earlier this week, and actually got fired like right after the game, Gerard Mayo. And then you go to guys like Robert Saleh as well. And I'll tell you why I brought him up. Let me first talk about Antonio Pierce and Gerard Mayo. We kind of went into deep detail about how Antonio Pierce literally came into the season hamstring struck, one arm tied behind his back, because if you don't have the quarterback in this league, it's hard to win games.
Mhm.
And you saw what he did as an interim head coach, right? That team could have definitely went left. Everybody rallied around him. I mean, they're smoking cigars in the locker room after wins.
Inhaling them.
Exactly. He's so stupid, bro.
Not just buffing that thing.
Inhaling a
Yeah.
cigar is diabolical.
Ugh.
But again, this was a team that was talent deficient, but yet he was getting the most out of them. And he essentially almost led them to the playoffs. Like I think they were one or two games back from getting into the playoffs. So he ends up getting the job. But yet not much changes in regards to, what they did to try to change the team. And we were talking about this earlier. Rand Carthon got fired, but Callahan keeps his job. But Antonio Pierce got fired, but Tom Telesco keeps his job, which is baffling.
Mismatch.
But baffling, because now you're going to be in a scenario again where you got a new head coach, right? Is he going to mesh with the new GM? And that relationship, is it going to be rocky or not? But getting back to Antonio Pierce, you can't win when inept quarterback play. We saw that this team never quit, even though they were talent deficient. Brock Bowers will probably be an all-pro, and he deserves to be. But for him to do that with the quarterback play he had kind of speaks to how special he actually really is, right? Me and Mike already talked about it. We saw the offensive line actually take a step, because they struggled last year, and they actually played really well at times this year. So you can kind of hang your head on that. And we always talk about this guy. When you want to build a team, you want to build it from the inside out, right? So Antonio Pierce kind of started doing that. I think one of the biggest things, people talk about their defense took a step back. People forget Christian Wilkins got hurt early in the season. Bro, he was their big free agent acquisition. It was supposed to be him and Max Crosby, and Max Crosby got hurt too. Like, those were supposed to be the dudes that were supposed to take over up front. And you missed your two best defensive linemen, but yet the other guys actually stepped up and still played hard. Now, again, it wasn't as dominant as it was last year, but when you're missing probably one of the top 2 or 3 defensive ends in the league.
Yep.
Christian Wilkins is a top 10 defensive tackle in the league.
Yep.
Like, you're going to struggle on defense. So it's just like, how do you expect him to have success when your 2 top guys go down, you don't have a good quarterback, right? And then you had to fire your offensive coordinator midway through the season because you weren't getting good play on the offensive side. Let's go to Gerard Mayo. Everybody and their mother, even if you just watch a hair bit of football, knew that was the least talented team in the league. The least talented team in the league, right? Now, Drake May, and that's why a lot of people thought Drake May would take a year out, because people felt like you can't put him in front of that O-line because he's going to get dismantled if you put him in front of that O-line. But we learned something from Drake May. He's a competitor. He's a guy that's not going to make excuses. He's going to keep swinging, right? Big time arm. We saw that at North Carolina. Worked on some of his footwork, because that was my biggest thing for him at North Carolina. Matching that bottom half with his top half. It was all over the place in North Carolina. He worked on those things throughout training camp and throughout the season. And you saw him with receivers that would be most likely 3, 4s, or 5s on other teams make plays. I mean, Keishon Boutte, a lot of people thought this dude was about to be out the league, and he became a real deep threat for them this year. So you saw what he did with not having much talent. But if you're Gerard Mayo, like, yes, he made some faux pas, but that happens when you're a rookie head coach.
Yep.
My thing is, if you're going to give me a real opportunity, give me a real opportunity to learn from some of my mistakes. Everybody kind of knew this was going to be a down year for the Patriots, right? So how do you fire a guy after you give them the opportunity, knowing that he's got the least talented roster in all of football? And yes, he made some mistakes. You can't publicly call your players soft.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'll be devil's advocate here.
Yeah, no, you can't call your – I mean, I got you.
Because I would hold a grudge.
Yeah, you can't call your players soft publicly, right? You got to think, once you're a head coach, you're no longer part of the locker room. You're no longer a player. Like, things that you might have been able to say in the locker room as a player, you can't say that as a head coach, right? But that's the growing, you know what I'm saying? That's the growing pains of being a first-time head coach. And my thing is, if you're going to give him a real chance, give him a real chance, because you didn't really add any talent to the roster this offseason. You re-signed a lot of guys on the team from a team that wasn't good the year before, right? And then you actually lost a few pieces. When you talk about Matt Judon, which, again, he didn't play that well in Atlanta, but this was a guy that constantly was getting double-digit sacks for you. So it just wasn't the same. And you knew going into this year, you're going to have draft capital. You're going to have a boatload of free agency money to spend. And yet, why not give him an opportunity to fill out the roster and see what he can do and see if he can grow as a head coach? And then we go to the offensive side. We were talking about guys like Brian Callahan. You did spend a boatload of money in the offseason, and you end up getting the number 1 pick in the draft, but the GM get fired and you didn't. Let's go to Brian Daboll, which I love. I think he's a really good coach, and I think he maximized, and to his detriment, maximized what he did with Daniel Jones that first year and got them into the playoffs, right? And I essentially hurt them, because after that, they weren't in prime position to take a quarterback of the future because they were having success, right?
We got our guy.
And they paid Daniel Jones. They didn't pay Saquon Barkley. They didn't pay Xavier McKinney.
Jeez.
And also, I think Brian Daboll was hamstrung by what the GM did and some of the decisions he made. But yet, he kept his job for another year. And this is why I brought Robert Saleh, because people were telling me ad nauseum, as a head coach, it's your job to control the entire team. You're not just a defensive-minded coach. You're not just an offensive-minded coach. Okay, I get that. But let's not forget the Jets were like a bottom 3 defense in the league when he got there. He made them in a consistent top 5 defense year in and year out. But the same thing happened to Gerard, or not to Gerard Mayo, but Antonio Pierce. If you do not have the right signal caller, you have no chance to win in this league. And I thought it was premature, and I love Woody Johnson. Everybody knows that. I thought it was premature to fire him because the risk reward during that point of the season, they were fighting for first place in the AFC East, the risk outweighed the reward to firing him right there. Because now you move Jeff Albrecht, who was the best coach on your staff,
everything falls apart,
to head coach, which means he can't focus on what he needs to do on the defensive side because he has so much on his plate. And now the defense isn't playing well. So it's just like, it's crazy to me that offensive coaches continue to, get extra opportunities. They get a longer leash than defensive coaches. And I say this because Zach Taylor's a perfect example. The last 2 years, that Bengals defense has been awful. Now, Lou Anarumo, 3 years ago, was considered maybe a hot head coach candidate for what he did and that defense did. Because people forget, during that playoff run, when they made it to the Super Bowl, the offense wasn't lights out for the Bengals. It was the defense that was keeping them in games, right? But me and Mike talked about this ad nauseum. When you have guys that go in the first round and don't develop, like Miles Murphy, when your defensive tackles get hurt, when you allow guys like Jesse Bates to leave, and you're not extending guys like Trey Hendrickson, that shows a bad culture, not only from the team, but ownership as well. When you're not paying your foundational pieces,
culture.
Yeah, when you're not paying your foundational pieces, what makes you think other guys want to come and be a part of that? Because I see how you're doing Jamar Chase. I see how you're doing T. Higgins.
And how could you do him like that? And
now
what are you
it's going to cost
me?
you more. Now it's going to cost you even more.
Yeah.
Trey Hendrickson led the league in sacks. So, but yet Zach Taylor got to keep his job because his offense was putting up historical numbers. Yeah. But yet they didn't make the playoffs.
Maybe it's just because they have Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins, and you should just pay those guys.
And last year they went 9-8 without Joe Burrow. So if we're being 100% honest.
Yeah.
So why does the goalpost get moved for defensive coaches and not offensive coaches?
I think there's two big things. One is just that in recent memory, it's been all offensive coaches. Last 5 Super Bowls, all offensive coaches on the winning end, losing end. So owners see that. Owners see, how do I get to the Super Bowl? They're looking at that. What do I want? It's been all offensive coaches of late. Now, some of that's because it's been all offensive coaches getting new jobs, but that's also like they see who's winning.
Trending.
That's that. And 2, defense more so than offense, if I just had to peg it, is far more talent-based. You just have to have the horses. No DC can make magic with a shitty talent on a roster.
Chargers
Whereas
did this
offensively, who did?
The Chargers did this year.
Yeah, even they still had Khalil Mack.
Is he not, dude? Did you not hear Justin Herbert talking yesterday about he knew that Coach Harbaugh was different when he found out?
He said he
remembers the day he was born. Old son, there's something there. It ain't right, but man, he can coach some football.
But even Harbaugh was an offensive coach to start. But that's, I think the difference is that people see bad results on the defensive side of the ball and they think it's the coach doing so when they can't objectively evaluate the roster and say, we don't actually have the talent walking through that door to do it. Whereas offensive, like a very good offensive coordinator, say a Kyle Shanahan, a Sean McVay, they will still give you run of the mill to above average offenses just because they're that far ahead of everyone else. And so that's what everyone's searching for. And I think that's the biggest thing. Now, I think Robert Saleh is a different animal. I still maintain that he was fired for different reasons altogether other than performance on the football field.
I remember that conspiracy theory.
I still do. I mean, because of
it could be true.
Because it was week 4.
Yeah,
in a make or break season, they had to know that you fire your head coach, it's just things don't turn around. They had to know.
The history showed that.
So that, to me, I still maintain was not performance related. There's something going on behind the scenes, or not behind the scenes, maybe in your face, that everyone saw that Woody Johnson didn't like. But I think the other guys, it's more a factor of they expect a DC to immediately have a DC head coaching hire to immediately have a great defense, and that's just not the way of the world in the NFL. All right.
That is, makes me look inward as an offensive guy, because I know if I were to coach, I'd be on an offensive staff, and now I feel bad for the defensive guys.
Oh, it's tough.
That get let go.
But I actually was just breaking this down.
Quicker expiration
when
date.
you look at like the landscape of the playoffs right now, I believe there's, if I'm not mistaken, 4, maybe 5 offensive-minded coaches that actually call the plays. Mm-hmm. Right. And then when you look at the opposite way, I think there's 7 or 8 guys that are either defensive coaches or offensive guys. There's one special teams, John Harbaugh, obviously, or offensive guys, but they don't call the plays. Like, so Sirianni, Campbell don't call the plays. Harbaugh doesn't call the plays. Right. John Harbaugh is special teams. And I think there's 3 or 4 defensive guys. I think Sean McDermott, who did call plays but isn't now, Todd Bowles, who calls the plays, D'Amico, who calls the plays. So I'm like, when you look at the landscape, I'm like, I get everybody wants the next offensive guru, but that's not necessarily how you win in this league. And the playoffs are indicative of that this year.
Yeah.
All right. Kyle, what do you got?
I'm gonna go with non-football head coach candidates, either from history, dead or alive, cartoons, movies, TV shows.
Oh, okay. So it doesn't have to be.
So while I present this list, you guys kind of rack your brains for some entertaining ones. I think as a red-blooded American, it would be hard not to start this list without old Teddy Roosevelt.
It's great.
Oh, yeah.
The Rough Riders.
Right at the top of that list.
I mean, I could see the T-shirt right now in the special teams room.
Did he get to play? I mean, football was just coming up around then. He had to have played a little, right?
He was a sick young boy.
I was about to say, yeah.
He dealt with a lot as
health-wise, he might not
as a child
able to play.
I think, which is why he had such tremendous fervor for adventure in his teenage and later years.
Okay.
Teddy Roosevelt. You want to talk about leaders of men. So this guy, forgive my lack of military jargon, but this guy had a position in the military. He was a high-ranking military official or an officer, and he wanted more. He was like, look, I'm a leader, but I'm with this giant group. He's like, I want to start my own special forces, essentially. Mm-hmm. And they're like, okay. And this could be hearsay. I could just be making this up. But they were essentially like, okay, but you got to go recruit these guys yourself. So what did he do? He went to small towns with football teams, and he found guys with no future in professional sports or college, and he was like, "Would you like to be part of my special forces? I need the biggest, baddest dudes in America."
That's how like most coaching staffs are put
And then he
together.
went to some reservations, some Native American reservations, and he found the best guys he could find that ride horseback. And he was like, "I need the fastest, most confident, most badass dudes from your tribes." And he got some folks to do that. And then he went and found like the smartest guys he could find at whatever schools. And he formulated the Rough Riders, and the Rough Riders was like a cavalry unit, which is where the horses come in.
Correct.
You need some brave dudes there. Let's go storm the hill. Let's go do some shit. So Teddy Roosevelt, leader of men, is the first on the list, and then I'm going to go quicker on these. Pat Summitt. Okay, I wanted to get
choice.
I wanted to get a strong woman on this list, and I feel like Pat Summitt meets
definitely strong,
checks every box
for sure.
Rick Rubin. The white guy that's always in Jay-Z's
the producer.
studio.
Yeah.
To make sure the vibe is right.
The vibes has got to be
now,
right.
I don't know if he's going to be a head coach, but he'd probably be an offensive coordinator, creative. He's out there wearing no shoes.
Yes.
And I'm thinking maybe Mac Hollins. If there is a Rick Rubin staff, it would be
the Bills.
Rick Rubin, Mac Hollins, no shoes, and then
Aaron Rodgers is your quarterback.
Shoeless Joe Jackson can be the special teams coach.
Dude, him and Aaron Rodgers would break records.
Phil Jackson.
Okay.
Offense.
Easily.
Zen master. This is a guy who was able to get Dennis Rodman to show up week in, week out. And on a show where I sit here and I bitch about George Pickens failing to be prepared emotionally for football games, I just want to know, could Phil Jackson get through to him? If Mike Tomlin can't, can Phil Jackson do it? That might be the answer to some of those problems in Pittsburgh. Patty Main. This was a submission from upstairs in the research den, as it were. Yeah. Patty Main was the founding member of the SAS, his Robert Blair Patty Main. So he was one of the British Army's most highly decorated soldiers during the Second World War, but he started the SAS. And if you've ever played Call of Duty, you probably know of one of the protagonists, Soap McTavish.
Oh, okay.
With the mustache and the little beret. That essentially was made, it was a tip of the cap to Patty Main.
Okay.
And you know what? I just imagine a British accent up there at the front of a meeting room, just saying some cuss words we've never heard. I'd be like, I'm drinking my tea in the front row, buddy. I'm all bought in. Okay. SAS, badass group of allies there. And then I'm going to go Joe Torre of the New York Yankees. Okay, this was when I was growing up. You'd watch the Yankees, and that was excellence. These guys, no facial hairs, socks pulled up to the knee, clean cut, just winners. You know what I mean? They just knew how to win games. And then I'm going to go Taylor Swift.
Okay, you lost.
No. Hear me out. You got to sit here for the sell. I went to a Taylor Swift show with my wife at the Hard Rock Stadium. It was 4 hours. There must have been 60 people on the stage. Taylor Swift was the quarterback of the entire operation. She had charisma, energy throughout the entire thing. There was not one flub. There was not one person stubbing a toe. Actually, there was one wardrobe malfunction, and you could hear a hot mic. Taylor was like, I need some help. There was no panic in her voice. She was able to fix the situation when it happened, and I feel like you could get the attention of a bunch of young men if you put Taylor Swift at the front of the room. That's all.
Just because you're a good quarterback, though, I don't know if that makes you a good head coach. Like Bart Starr was the coach back.
She would be some. So, do you think Taylor Swift is in charge of the fireworks at her show and
that's
the lights?
No, I don't think
the
so.
Sound, but she could probably motivate a room.
Okay,
and she could have a good staff to handle the fireworks and the wardrobe. And maybe she even helps with wardrobe. I don't know what her forte is. It's songwriting, maybe. So maybe she's an OC. Okay, whoever built the Great Wall of China, because that wall,
aliens.
That wall is you can see it from space, but I don't think the aliens built it. That is like, if you want to build a defensive and offensive line, go find the guy or the gal.
The Han Dynasty. Is that who built it?
One of those dynasties. And then I'm gonna go.
They're better than the Patriots. Oz
the Mentalist.
Oh, yeah. He could be your guy in the booth. He's just looking at the other side, stealing signs.
Corsi.
No, he's your who's the Michigan guy?
Yeah, Connor Stallions. Okay, this is an easy one. Ted Lasso. I mean, he went to the UK and learned soccer, so he should be able to do football. Eric Spoelstra is another basketball name that I pulled out. And I was a fan of LeBron when he went to Miami. And I got to watch a young Eric Spoelstra who started off for the Miami Heat as a guy who would like splice the VHSs.
Yep, for sure.
And he worked his way. And you and I know, and Mike knows how these guys are. They are all ball.
Yes,
And
that guy would have fit in at PFF.
Eric Spoelstra would have been perfect in an NFL building. And then I've got Stone Cold Steve Austin. But he's got to wear the little denim shorts.
I mean, he's basically
black shirt, vest, denim shorts, knee pads every day.
I mean, he's
and
Dan
Mike Vrabel, he would be in there during individual period. He'd put his paws on you every once in a while, and you kind of like it, I think. Okay, this is a golf one. Tiger Woods. Tiger Woods is one of the most elite.
He already managed a big roster.
He's one of
I was about to say, we've seen it.
Give this guy his credit. That was a good one. Way to go, Mike.
I was going to go. I was like, we kind of had that with Urban Meyer already.
Right.
Urban Meyer, you can't even breathe Urban Meyer's name in the same sentence as Tiger Woods. It's so disrespectful. Well, they probably had some similar qualities.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Some
Tiger
crossover there.
Woods was the most elite athlete on the face of the planet, the best competitor. Everything we talk about with Kobe and MJ, that's Tiger Woods. So if you think that Kobe would be a great football coach, I would raise you at Tiger Woods because this guy was an absolute animal. Not only that, he took his strength and conditioning very seriously, and he is no stranger to hiring a staff. He's had dozens of swing coaches, golf coaches. I've read a lot of the literature about this guy and his training regimen and his Tiger days, as it were, reminded me of training camp. And I feel like he would be able to.
He would set the good tone.
He would relate to these guys.
Yeah.
And there's nothing better than, you show up for the 8:00 meeting and Tiger Woods goes to the front of the room and he's got his 2-minute video to get the vibe set for the day. Coaches pull the YouTube videos, whether it's cheetahs hunting or we've all seen
to get the vibes going early.
Tiger would have great videos for that. That's my list. Do you guys have anybody that I forgot?
When you texted us first, I don't know why this came to mind, but Christopher Nolan was one of the first that came to mind just because he manages just insanely large productions, right? And the creativity of his movies, I feel like he'd be
my Taylor Swift pick.
He'd be an offensive mind. No, but like Taylor Swift doesn't manage the whole production. She has like a production manager.
Got a chair that's like, he's
literally directing, like putting together all how the scenes look and whatnot.
Like Ben Johnson.
And then the other one was Elon Musk, just because that everything he touches turns
rocketry.
I mean, like his companies are just the fact that he's running like a zillion
Which
companies.
Which quarterback would Elon Musk want?
Oh gosh,
he
might buy Liverpool, is what I heard. He's interested in buying Liverpool. Wow. Yeah, that would be.
Let's get down.
LeBron has some stake in that team too. Yeah.
I wonder what that tea party would be like. LeBron and Elon.
We're going historical. Alexander the Great. I mean, he was like the Sean McVay of his time, just young, burned hot, early age.
Napoleon.
Yeah. Rebuilt Paris.
So you said that. I was going to go to Toussaint Louverture, who led the Haitian Revolution against France. When you talk about, we were talking about coaches earlier doing more with less. Nobody did more with less than Toussaint did. So him, and then I would say Dawn Staley. She's a really great leader, right?
Cavalier.
I've heard so many great things, not only from ex-players, but people that follow the game in regards to her leadership and being able to bring a team together. So I think Dawn Staley would be another really good one.
That would be awesome. And I think she was a Virginia Cavalier Hall of Famer.
I believe she is. Yeah.
All right, my deep dive. I just want to know who you guys think the ideal candidates for the musical chairs that is going to be the 6 job openings in the NFL at head coach. I'll just give mine to rip. So we got the Bears, Jags, Jets, Raiders, Pats, Saints, Bears. I don't know if you like this one, Kyle, but I think Brian Flores is the ideal to set that building straight.
That's
Mike Vrabel, not necessarily the best one, but just how
I'm asking.
The way you asked.
No, I'm saying, is that what's gonna? Is that his prediction?
This is like
is that his prediction, or is that what's?
I'm not saying like what's the best one.
I trust Mike,
because I'd say like Ben Johnson's the best one.
If you say Brian Flores is the best one, I will be on Twitter.
Makes a lot of sense.
I will be on Twitter today, leading the efforts to get Brian Flores to be the head coach,
because he will. One, set the tone from top, like change the organizational culture immediately. They have so much talent there in that defense that they would be a top 3 defense. Like they'd be right back at the top of the heap.
Get my Twitter going.
And we saw how he what he did with Tua. I do think like getting Caleb Williams. I mean, his comments at times throughout the season were just a little flaky, shall we say. I think he would put that quarterback room just on notice about what has to happen going forward. And Caleb, I think, would respond to that.
This is the thing. This is what I would say about this, right? Just listening to Brian Flores after Tua publicly came out, talked about how hurt he was in that scenario. If a coach told you every day how bad you sucked, you shouldn't be here. Sound like he's grown a lot from that scenario. Now, I don't know if you guys saw this. Ryan Fitzpatrick, he has a podcast. He went out and talked about it and said, essentially, buyers beware when it comes to Brian Flores because, yes, he may have grown when he was the Vikings, but Fitzpatrick was there with him in Miami, and he saw the day-to-day, and he saw how he berated Tua. And then he said it almost felt like at times that Flores didn't even listen to his staff, and it all became about him, right? So you worry about that. Now, again, I'm one that always says people can learn and grow, right? And I think everybody deserves a second chance. And listening to the Viking players speak so highly about Brian Flores makes me think that he has
grown. They go to the podium with him.
Exactly, that he has grown from that scenario. So I actually don't mind that. I just say it's a interesting scenario because it's kind of like the Tua scenario, right? Like Tua had a lot of talent coming in. Caleb has a lot of talent coming in. And the way that Brian Flores tried to get the best out of Tua obviously doesn't work. And that's why
nature versus nurture.
Yes, that's why each coach has to have a temperature on the team and each individual player, because you need to know how to exactly push your player to get the best out of them.
I agree with you that they need somebody to come in and reset that culture.
Yeah.
What you were just saying reminds me of it's nature versus nurture. And some kids require nature and some kids require nurture. Some players require
some
nature.
need to be cuddled a little
Let's
bit.
Let's not forget that the Miami Dolphins ran Vic Fangio out of town as well.
Yeah.
And it almost seems like that organization isn't ready for some real football talk. You know what I'm saying? Whether it's a quarterback or the deep. I mean, you said it, not me. Okay, so I like that. Brian Flores. I on my list is also Vrabel, but there's so many options now with Brady being in Las Vegas, the Patriots, the Jets. I could see Vrabel being in any of those spots.
Yeah.
The nurture side of things, if nature is Brian Flores and Mike Vrabel, then the nurture would be Ben Johnson.
Correct.
Because you would need somebody to
I've seen him a little spicy on the sidelines too.
He's spicy. We haven't gotten enough of Ben Johnson.
Yeah, so we don't actually know what he would be like.
So that's the mystery box in COD Zombies. It's like you could get the ray gun. Ray gun would be nice.
Jags, Ben Johnson. That one just like, yes.
Home run.
But is it though? Because Trent Baalke stayed as GM. Did you guys see that interview with him?
Yeah, we talked about it.
Yes. So he could be out.
But Ben Johnson says, I think if you're hiring Ben Johnson, you're letting Ben Johnson call the free shots.
Yeah.
So.
Well, they said supposedly
right over
the head
Trent's
coach
head.
will talk directly to ownership.
Yes.
Which
great situation there, right?
I don't know if I like that dynamic.
Yeah, right. Exactly how you want it to set up. Just the GM's a figurehead. Jets, Aaron Glenn.
My guy.
Perfect.
I think it's just perfect way to reset where the Jets are. Again, Ben Johnson's not going to want to go. They're going to have to get a culture fit for a guy to, again, reset the culture for the New York Jets.
And a guy that was there, first round pick, two-time Pro Bowler there.
The guy who would want to come to New York and turn it around. He's the guy. Raiders, this was a pipe dream, but Liam Cohen, you have the Tampa Bay Bucks connection with Tom Brady. Would you want to go there? I don't know. He could obviously come back and still have success. They have a lot of talent there offensively. He'd have another good offense. He's going to have his pick of jobs at some point in time if they keep going this way. So what do you want to? But it's a pipe dream. That's their best bet. Pats, Mike Vrabel, no argument there, like no debate there. That is probably going to happen here shortly.
I would say in the next couple hours.
Yeah. Saints, I went Clint Kubiak. I think what he did with what finished the season as the worst pass blocking offensive line in the NFL, according to PFF, to even have a modicum of a good offense, I thought I was impressed with how he put it together. And again, you're the New Orleans Saints. No one's going to want to come there. You're in such a bad spot from a cap perspective.
Man.
You are this year's lame duck job where you could be gone after 1 year if you go take that job. It just because no one's going to want to go there. So that's why if you go from within, keep
harvest
things. Keep on the track.
They got to reset it, though.
Of the one thing that kind of worked last year for you. I do know you have to reset, but I think you reset when it's like completely clean slate.
Yeah.
They're still like maybe even 2 years away from getting a clean slate there in terms of getting all those bad contracts off the books.
I think they got to eat a lot of that this year and just play with a lot of young guys. Essentially what Denver did. Right?
Yeah.
I like that one because for some odd reason, people are trying to push Aaron Glenn there. Yes, he played there, but he's known as a Jet. Like,
I would not.
He would. And to your
him.
point, like the situations are a lot different because they have no cap room. Where the Jets are probably going to get a significant boost when they get Devontae off the books and also Aaron Rodgers off the books.
There's
as
a
well.
chance things turn around.
So like they can turn things around. Like Tyrod could be a good bridge quarterback. He's actually had a lot of success in this league.
Tyrod's a really good quarterback.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So like if you're Aaron Glenn, like, and you look at just the talent alone, you're like, New York makes a lot more sense than going to New Orleans. And this is not me, throwing shade at New Orleans, but this is what happens when you continue to kick the can down the road. But there is one thing I wanted to talk to you guys about, because we were talking about this earlier. Vrabel got fired last year. It's so funny how the league works, right? Because the man couldn't even get an interview last year. And I talked about this ad nauseum because guys like him and Bill Belichick, I felt like the game had passed them by, and the way that they like to coach and the way they like to develop and the culture that they bring in. Is it conducive to some of these young guys coming into the league? And it's funny now because all of a sudden he's the hottest coach candidate when last year the man couldn't even get an interview. What changed is my question.
Yeah.
Newfound appreciation. What's it?
People are putting a premium on culture now.
Nostalgia.
We talk about culture. Culture is one of those words that you can say it till you're blue in the face. Yeah. But when you see your stars on the team pointing fingers and guys checked out in the media and the answers in the reporters, and you're in a town like New York, you need somebody who's going to keep it together, which is why the Rex Ryan stuff doesn't even drive me crazy, because he's the last guy.
The culture right there.
He did it for 5 years in a row. I mean, that guy was the last one who could do it. And I mean, while the game has advanced and moved down the road a bit, the one thing that will never change is the ability to get 53 guys on the same page, ready to execute a mission. And you played there with Rex.
Yeah, it's my guy.
I mean, you can echo those sentiments, I'm sure.
Without a doubt. I love Rex. I would be real interested to see, would he be okay taking a DC job? Because I think when you've been out of the game that long, I'm not saying the game is passing by, but I would love to see him be a DC, and maybe, a year or two down the road, if he wants to be a head coach, you have another opportunity. But the Vrabel thing is interesting to me because, yes, you can change the culture, but his biggest issue is that he didn't want to evolve the offense in Tennessee, and that's why they were left behind. So, what has changed since then to make teams be like, he's the hottest candidate out there right now? It's not no shade at Mike Vrabel, but it's just like, unless he's willing to evolve, he's going to be in the same scenario 2 or 3 years from now.
Well, I think it's the Titans going 3-14 that changed. It was, they saw that, hey, they had so much this roster and they sucked even worse. It's like, I think that was the thing, is that
but they weren't good the year before with him, though.
Newfound appreciation for how he cobbled things together there, how they even got the 1 seed in the first place that 1 year with, Ryan Tannehill wasn't even in the league this year.
Guys rave about him.
I heard he's a great coach, and people always just assume like he's a minion of Bill Belichick, but he coached on the Bill O'Brien, which again is a tree off of Bill Belichick. He just played at the Patriots, but again, the year he got fired, they weren't good. Right? They were a top team. They picked in the top 10 for a reason.
But it's also, I think, for certain teams. I wouldn't want him for the Jags. I wouldn't want him for the Saints. I would want him for a team like the Pats is, I think, the front runner, because obviously like the way they do business, they want,
makes sense for sure.
Pats for life sort of people. That's what they want as a franchise. So I think for them, like, I don't even know if I'd want him for the Jets, truthfully. So
that's what I've been saying. I was like, I do think it makes
the Bears
sense,
because they just need top-down leadership in any way, shape, or form, and that's what you can get from Mike Vrabel. Yes,
for lack of a better term. I mean, I remember when my mom used to be with all 3 of us boys on the weekend, and Dad would be working at Fox. These studio gigs, you're gone all day
for sure,
and we'd be acting a fool, and Dad would come home and
stops
and attention, you know what I mean?
Stops.
And God bless my mom. She was amazing, a saint. But at the end of the day, Dad came into that front door, and the boys were straight.
I would just worry about Caleb's development with Vrabel, and again, it's not me throwing shade at Vrabel
with him.
Exactly. Who is going to be the guy on the offensive side? Like, can he maybe lure Liam Cohen away or Bill O'Brien? But Bill O'Brien's, I think he's comfortable with Boston College as a head coach right now. So it's just like that would be my concern.
But what do you want to work with Caleb Williams?
Because you talked about
and then play his way into.
I don't know, because you talked about it in Tannehill, but he was already a veteran, like in there, right? Mm-hmm. He had Will Levis, And at times, it seemed like he didn't even like Will Levis by some of the the videos, right, that they were playing. Even when Will Levis played well, it was like he couldn't stand him. So it's just like, how is that going to be with Caleb? You know what I'm saying? Because I don't think he really wants a young quarterback.
He doesn't play that dumb shit.
Yeah. Which, if he goes to the Patriots, he's going to have a young quarterback. Yeah. So.
But I think people think he's different.
Yeah, Drake's definitely different.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. After that, going to get to your guys' mailbag questions.
Welcome to JJ's.
I'll have wait, there's no way I can get a burger?
No chance. But you can have the NFL on CBS streams live on Paramount Plus. Oh, hang on. There's a toy.
All right, first one comes from Rocky D. What are the chances we get a Bills-Vikings Super Bowl? And if we got it, who do you think would win? Man, I think it's pretty low. I don't give the Vikings a great shake. I'll be honest, after what I saw in Week 18, but I think they're firmly, in terms of teams I would think could run through, probably 10% chance in the NFC. Bills is more like 40.
Yeah, it's a toss-up.
You think it's that high?
For the Bills to get through the AFC? 30?
I would say 30.
Okay, 30 is fair.
That's a great number. You take those odds.
So then
Bills
you add those together.
30%.
They're going to come back.
There's a lot of teams,
Bills Mafia does not play.
So that's a 3% chance if we add those together. So that's what we give it. And who would win?
The Chiefs.
Talking about the Bills and Vikings.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we were talking about
I know what you thought.
We were talking about the Super Bowl.
I mean, it's in the dome. That would be actually a pretty good game.
It would be.
Because weather is not going to be a factor.
Doesn't matter what pressure you throw at Josh Allen. His offensive line is elite. They do a tremendous job in prepping for pressures. I've been in a million of those blitz meetings with their O-line coach. In addition to that, if you do happen to have a free runner, good luck getting Josh Allen down. And you know what happens? If you miss him, you better hope that back end is aces, because Josh Allen is not going to miss that throw off.
This is what I'll say. If you actually have a front that can rush, we've seen Josh Allen struggle a little bit. We saw the Houston Texans game. We saw the Ravens game.
But if you're adding from the second level.
Yeah, but I'm saying, the Texans don't have to add.
That's
the Vikings essentially don't have to add either.
If you're winning your matchups on the defensive line, not the guys that are mugged, not the guys that are green dog.
I would say that's not true either, because we saw New England do it in Week 17, and they went man coverage, and those receivers couldn't get off the damn press.
I want to know if I'm going to throw that film out. I'm not sure yet.
How can you throw it out?
I don't know.
You can't throw it.
There's some bad weeks. I think
that's why I love this show, because now we can talk football, right? Because when you look at it, everything that everybody was applauding Josh for, and this is not me throwing any shade, he definitely deserves to be in the MVP conversation. When you look at the Rams game, right? When you go back and you look at the Lions game, a lot of the plays he made were off-platform throws.
Yep.
Right? We know you can't consistently win doing that.
Yeah. And
it came to a head in New England because their corners could man up with their receivers, right? So now you go to a team like the Vikings who can do that with Byron Murphy and Stephon Gilmore, and Shaq Griffin's actually played really well for them on the outside, and you allow your front to go, or even go to Baltimore Ravens, where their secondary has changed since they put Kyle Hamilton back at safety, right? Marlon Humphrey's an all-pro this year. He can man up with Shakir in the slot. Right. And then you talk about on the outside, Nate Wiggins has played really well the last couple of weeks. Now, Stevens has had some struggles, but I guarantee they'll probably shift coverage his way if it comes down to it. So that's the thing, right? That's what I want to watch, because that first matchup they got, that's not going to be no cakewalk.
No.
That team leads the league in sacks.
Yep.
More specifically from the defensive line, the Denver Broncos.
I think we could be looking at 100-yard Josh Allen rushing day, though, in Buffalo.
That could be big.
You know what I'm saying?
I think Senard's going to be big. He's going
rush
to
lane integrity. They do a great job in Denver of falling into natural TTs,
correct,
and natural stunts. Zach Allen's been fantastic.
Him, John Franklin,
he's got a really good.
They're like the same players.
He's got a really good feel for where he needs to end up.
Correct.
But Josh Allen has a similar feel for where he's got to get to when that pocket breaks down.
Like,
and if they do have good coverage on the back end, there are holes to be had in the running game with Josh.
Sure. And but that's the thing too. So like nobody's talking about the game, but I think that's going to be actually.
Yeah,
I like that. If it was
because Sean Payton can dial it up, and that defense for Buffalo has given up a lot of explosives.
And there's not many guys in the league right now who are as experienced as Sean Payton in the playoffs and getting a team ready to go and have that calm.
And they're playing with house money this year, so they're going to go in like free.
You're right.
Our next one comes from Simon Says. He says, if you're the Raiders, would you trade up for the second pick from Cleveland by offering to take Watson and his contract?
No.
Ooh.
You would have to give me the second overall pick outright to take Watson and his contract because
Thank you.
I mean you're taking on $46 million each of the next 2 seasons against your cap. That is
$90
a quarter of the cap.
$1
You're taking on
or
almost a quarter.
I kind of like this idea though, because if you're the Raiders, you get your quarterback of the future, and you help Cleveland get off of all that bad money. Now the thing is, I would have to see the financials for the Raiders to see if it's possible. Which
they're paying 4 head coaches right now.
Yeah.
Well, that doesn't count.
That doesn't do anything. The cap,
But it counts for Mark. Mark has to stop getting his car washed. I'll tell you that much.
I mean, they have so many concerts there. He's got to be making so much money off of the stadium alone, bro.
Does he get money from the Sphere too?
Probably not.
He needs to get a deal with that.
But that's an interesting concept, though.
JJ McCarthy.
Because the Browns pioneered it with the
Osweiler, right?
Osweiler.
Yeah.
Yes, they got a second rounder to take on
his money. Yeah,
his money, and it was far less than what they would have to take on. So that's why I'm saying you would have to give up the number 2 overall pick.
Yeah,
Briscoe laid it out here. It's going to be JJ McCarthy, Michigan man.
I mean, my thing is, do you trade for a hurt player? Like, this is the second time.
See, I had this conversation with my wife 2 days ago. She said, "Would you ever trade for her?" I said, "This is a meniscus. Like, it's not like we're talking about."
But it cost him the whole year.
Wait, it was an Achilles.
Was it a meniscus? Wasn't it?
No, it was an Achilles.
For JJ McCarthy?
No, not JJ McCarthy.
Oh, shoot! I thought we were talking about Deshaun still.
No, we're talking about JJ McCarthy.
Oh, okay.
I was like, God, how wrong am I?
JJ McCarthy.
I've had a meniscus.
Yeah, and a
I went to
meniscus-
training camp a month later after a meniscus surgery.
We haven't even seen him on the sideline, so it's just like,
He looks scrawny. I'll tell you that much.
I'm saying, are you trading for that?
This is the one that also has less of a risk when you fully repair it than when you remove it. The one that's like the surgery and you're back in 3 weeks is the bad one. That's what Dwayne Wade had.
Yeah,
where it ruins maybe your career longevity.
Correct.
To get it taken out altogether.
I think that's why they did it that way. So
that because he's so young. Yeah.
I got a bunch of dots.
I mean, because the people are just assuming. Again, what if Sam Darnold goes out here and plays like he did versus the Detroit Lions? Who says the Minnesota Vikings are willing to get rid of JJ McCarthy?
Yeah, I doubt
people got to stop assuming that he's going to be available. Like, no.
And if he's available this early on,
it's a fun thought experiment.
It's a fun thought, but it doesn't mean he's just going to be available.
If he's available this early on, what does that mean about what they think of him too? You know, if they're willing to move on from him this early on in his career.
I mean, because Sam is still so young too. That's the thing.
So
28.
Is he? I thought he was 27.
Shit, if he's 27, that's my point. I mean, that guy's been in the league for
forever,
8 years.
but he came in so young.
All right, next.
I like that one. Simon says that's an interesting concept.
Micah Parsons should be in line to be one of the highest defensive.
This one comes to Perk Angle. Micah Parsons should be in line to be one of the highest highest paid defensive players ever.
I think you missed a word.
Where does this leave the Cowboys cap wise with Dak and CD already eating up so much space? Yeah. What players would you expect to be cap casualties with this in mind? The problem is it eats up a lot of cap space. Yeah. Obviously, he's going to get paid a ton. They should do it. They have the space to do it. They have $15 million under the cap. With how you would structure it, you'd probably take a little hit now. The problem is like Dak's numbers the next few years are astronomical.
Insane.
89 million. Then over 70 million the next 3 after that.
Oh my God.
So you could try to do some funny money and push that even farther and say Dak's going to be there 5-6 years and like rework that bonus, but then you're really like robbing future years.
Yeah.
I expect Terrence Steele to either be reworked or cut. Yeah. He has an $18 million cap hit this next season.
He's going to be.
And his pass pro.
I should have kept playing.
Not a strength. He might even be. I mean, if you want to keep him, I would even consider like putting him as the heir apparent to Zach Martin.
I was going to say
you could save money if you retire.
Free, so they'll get that money back.
Yeah. So all that being said, they can do it. It'll be tight. That's probably the only move they can make. They're not going to be able to sign many other people. So there's that.
Or you could be an Eagle.
Oh, God.
Oh, no. Next question is Simon says, again, he's back. Who is the week 1 starting quarterback for every team in 2025? So Giants, Browns, Raiders, Titans, Steelers. He didn't have Jets and Vikings. I think those are interesting conversations too. So I went Giants, Darnold, Browns, Deshaun.
Oh, so you got Sam Darnold leaving the free agency to go to the Giants?
I'm leaving to the Giants.
I mean, the GM is desperate. So
because they are desperate, right? That just feels like they have to keep their jobs. That's the decisions you make when you have to keep your job. Raiders, I have Kirk Cousins. Titans, I have Cam Ward. Steelers, I have Russ. Jets, I have Shedeur. and the Vikings, I have McCarthy.
So you got to just trading up everything to get up.
Not necessarily everything.
You got to think that third round pick is going to the Raiders for Devontae. So it's just like, what? So you're going to give up this year's first, probably second too?
I'm not sure you're going to have to trade up to 2, though. I don't know if the NFL is going to be as high on him. I don't know.
Shador?
Yeah.
I keep telling my Cam's going 1 overall.
Because also, because he can also say Cleveland's 2. He can be like, I don't want to go to Cleveland. What's he going to like?
Why
Cleveland
would he not want to go with Stefanski, though?
But he's a brand. He's a brand.
Man, you should
going to Cleveland. We've seen what it's done for some brands.
Baker Mayfield was in Cleveland. It was on every commercial for State Farm.
Yes.
So I mean, it is the NFL. Yeah. It's not the biggest deal in the world, but
shoot, I'd go to Cleveland. And the pressure ain't gonna be as crazy in New York compared to Cleveland.
Yeah.
The takeout is
that's my.
That's a fact.
That's what I'm thinking about. I'm such an old lineman, bro. I'm like, what does my Uber Eats look like?
All right. Next one comes from Holden. Will the emergence of a massive NIL fund, as well as the ability to transfer with basically no consequences, lead to future drafts suffering in terms of the amount of talent leaving and coming to the league, or will the talent still find its way to the league consistently?
It's already suffering.
I think it's going to ultimately be a good thing for a few reasons. One is that guys are coming into the NFL older now. You have far fewer third-year guys declaring than ever before.
That's true.
And that's ultimately a good thing. And I think you're eating some of those early on because obviously like when guys are staying in school, you'll have some weak ones, but down the stretch, we'll have more consistently stronger ones. You'll get more Jaden Danielses, Bo Nix, guys who, and especially at the quarterback position, who are developing at the position there or at the rate they're supposed to be developing against the competition they're supposed to be developing and coming into the league more confident because of it. So I think it's good from that perspective. And I also think you're weeding out a lot more guys who aren't in it for the love of the game. By getting money early on, you see these guys who are transferring to 2 and 3 different spots because who's going to pay me the next paycheck? Those guys aren't going to be drafted highly. They're just not. NFL teams are going to shy away from those guys. Yeah. And it's not good for them developmentally. They won't be as good on collegiate football fields either when you're doing that every single year. So I do think that it will weed out some of those and will leave older people coming into the NFL more developed. So from both perspectives, I think it'll ultimately be good, but you might have to early on just have a few weaker classes. This one may be one of them, but I think ultimately it'll be a good thing.
It's a good take.
All right.
That take for sure.
Last question here comes from my fiance, Mifi Miller. She said, rank your favorite touchdown celebrations, please.
Ooh, of all time?
This season.
I saw Jamar Chase wipe a ball's ass.
That was hilarious.
He pulled the hanky out and he gave the front to back. He's wiped some butts.
Sure.
That was good.
I would say anything that Cam Bynum and the Vikings defense.
Yes.
I mean, the white check.
Those are her favorite.
Was ridiculous, man. The flip. That one was probably the best one.
Not technically touchdown celebrations, but
defensive
celebrations.
That was great.
I loved Tony Gonzalez dunking. No, not Tony Gonzalez. Travis Kelce dunking in honor of passing Tony Gonzalez.
Cool. That was cool.
Love that one. And I also love everyone that scores a touchdown, hands the ball to the refs, and just shakes their teammates' hands. That's the Jordy Nelson.
What an alpha move.
Those are my favorite. Just hand the ball, slap some helmets, go back to the sidelines.
Strap hands.
Anything where I like the celebrations where touchdown pass, quarterback doesn't sprint to the end zone. He celebrates with his O-line, when they rally.
Wide receiver celebrate together. O-line and quarterback celebrate together.
It's one of the coolest things in football.
Sure.
It's one of the coolest things. Great question, Vaya.
Yeah.
All right. There you have it. That's today's show. We'll be back tomorrow previewing all the Wildcard Weekend games. Until then, keep pushing.